Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamadirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prajesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 9th day of December 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings, text number 34. Evam abhyasyatash chittam Evam amyasyatash chittam kalenalpi yasa yate kalenalpi yasa yate anisham tasya nirvanam anisham tasya nirvanam yati anindhana vanivat yatyanindana vanivat evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat Evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat Evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam Yatyanindhana vanivat. Evam abhyasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat. Evam abhyasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat. Evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat. Someone else? This side. Evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat. Ladies? Evamam yasya taschittam kalenalpi yasayate anisham tasya nirvanam yatyanindhana vanivat. Anyone online? Guess not.
Evam abhyasyatashchittam.
Evamam yasyatashchittam. Keep going.
Kalenalpyasa
Kalpenalpi yasayate. Third line.
Anisham tasya nirvanam.
Anisham tasya nirvanam. Yati?
Yati anindana vanivat.
Yatinindana vanivat. Okay, word by words. Evam, in this way, abhyasyataha, of the person practicing this yoga system. Chittam, the heart. Kalena, in due course of time. Alpiyasa, very shortly. Yatehe, of the person practicing yoga. Anisham, without cessation. Tasya, of him. Nirvanam, purification from all material contamination. Yati, reaches. Anindana, without flame or smoke. Vanivat, like a fire. Translation. I'll say, you say. When the yogi regularly practices in this way, in a short time his heart becomes fixed and free from disturbance, like a fire without flames or smoke. Purport. Oh, let me read the whole thing. When the yogi regularly practices in this way, in a short time his heart becomes fixed and free from disturbance, like a fire without flames or smoke. Purport. Nirvana means the cessation of all material desires. Sometimes desirelessness is understood to imply an end to the workings of the mind, but this is not possible. The living entity has senses, and if the senses stopped working, the living entity would no longer be a living entity. He would be exactly like stone or wood. This is not possible. Because he is living, he is nitya and chaitana, eternally sentient. For those who are not very advanced, the practice of yoga is recommended in order to stop the mind from being agitated by material desires. But if one fixes his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, his mind naturally becomes peaceful very soon. This peace is described in the Bhagavad Gita 5:29. I'll say, you say. Bhoktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sudidam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantamrichati. If one can understand Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor of everything, and the supreme friend of everyone, one is established in peace and is free from material agitation. However, for one who cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the practice of yoga is recommended. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, inevitably, in this passage from the Bhagavatam, I'm reminded of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna describes, in a fair amount of detail, but in summary form, the Ashtanga yoga system of meditation of Patanjali, more or less. And after describing it, and how to sit, where to go, be in a secluded place, not too high, not too low, and staring steadily at the tip of the nose. I tried it for about 5 seconds, but I felt I was getting cross-eyed. I don't know. There's an option. It also has or, and when I was researching this, or between the eyebrows. Now, I thought that was very interesting, because what does nasikagram mean? The word is nasikagram. Where the nose begins. Well, maybe it begins here, but it could also be said to begin here. Is it not? Anyway, that's more practical. But still, it's not practical for this age. Prabhupada makes it very clear in the purports in the 6th chapter that Arjuna, he's representing us. even though he's so qualified. He's an eternal friend of Krishna. He's living for 1,000 years. He's in the Dwapara Yuga. And he's such an exalted fighter and intimate of Krishna. And yet he rejects it with the famous verse, Chantalam himana Krishna pramati balabhaddadham tasyaham nugraham manye vair ibatu duskadam. Now, I think Prabhupada, in the purport there, or maybe in some of the lectures I heard him give on this, that he talks about trying to control a hurricane. Now, I spent a good portion of my devotional career in Hawaii. Not Hawaii, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Maharaj, he's the Hawaiian. In Miami. I'll try to make it over there sometime. I haven't made it yet. But Miami was a place where, especially like from July through September into October, you had to be very aware of the weather forecast, because there were usually one or more hurricanes blowing up in the Caribbean, and some of them were heading straight for Florida, could hit Miami. And so, but by good fortune, while I was there, we didn't have any direct hits. Although after I moved here, there was a big hurricane that I was following, because I still had so many friends there, and I was following, and it was heading straight for Miami Beach. In other words, heading straight for Miami. And I called up Dravida Dasa, who's like been there ever since 1968 or something. I mean, he's amazing. And he was, I think, at that point, serving as the president. But I said, well, what are you guys doing to prepare, for this hurricane? It looks like it's heading straight for you guys. Well, we're kind of depending on Krishna, and I said, come on, Dharma. Well, that's what the authorities tell us to do, Anyway, so that's what so I kept following it. And at the last minute, it veered off to the south and completely destroyed an Air Force base down there. I don't think they ever rebuilt it. And I called up Dharma, wow, you guys really lucked out. Yeah, and we were able to get, there was a slight damage, and we were able to get some money from the government for repair, and we're going to build a new altar or something, so it turned out to be a plus. Krishna saved it. But we had our own, believe it or not, Maharaj, we had our own little hurricane scare here last month ago. I don't know when it was. Was it? In August? Yeah, it was kind of early. But it was blowing up, it was coming up, and it was really hugging the shore. Usually they start to blow out toward Hawaii, before that. And so what had happened is they had the thing that happened in Hawaii, where it was the hurricane and it caused so much damage on Maui, right? Some people were killed, destruction. And there wasn't sufficient warning. They said that they didn't have the warning system properly going. So they kind of overwarned here. They said, it's coming, So I went home, I was watching, the weather outside. It was starting to rain, But it didn't get much past the drizzle. It was kind of a complete flop. Not that we were minding. Inland a little bit, it did some damage. But the point is that Krishna makes that Arjuna makes in his objection is that the mind is so stubborn and obstinate and powerful. It's trying to control us like trying to control the wind. Even if it's not a hurricane, you can blow up the wind. You can't control it. So he's pleading disability, and Prabhupada makes the point there, and in lectures on it, that who are we compared to Arjuna? Arjuna is so qualified and intimate of Krishna, and even he's saying he couldn't do it. So how could we be practical in this age? And Prabhupada had experience. When he first came, he went to Butler, which is now a famous city, Not because Prabhupada came there, because of other reasons you probably know. But anyway, he went there, but it was so remote, he got in the newspapers, it was nice because it got him settled kind of in America, but he didn't want to stay there. So he comes to New York, and somehow he got a connection with Dr. Mishra and his ashram uptown. And so he went up there because he could live there, and there were also some people to talk to, to preach to. But Dr. Mishra didn't like his preaching because it was too much personal. And he was obviously an impersonalist, so he said, you can't speak to the, So it was not a good place. But the one thing that did come out of there was that Prabhupada was able to record the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody donated a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I had one of those one time. And Prabhupada learned how to use it, and he recorded. And if it's long, it took days, really, if you look at it. And he completed that. Then it was burglarized, and someone stole the tape recorder. But thank God, they left the most valuable thing, that tape, with Prabhupada's introduction on it. So anyway, but then he made a connection. There was a connection. I'm not going to get into details, as you probably know some of it, as with some people in the God, I forget the name of that restaurant. Paradox restaurant, I think it was. I used to take lunch there in the '68, a few years later. So anyway, he came downtown, and you know the story, how he made good connection there. He found people who were ready to hear and chant, and I'm not going to go into that. So this, but in the chapter there, Arjuna pleads inability, and Krishna says, yes, it's tough, but it's possible by practice. Abhyasa yoga yuktena, And so Arjuna, he's still not very hopeful. So what if I fail, I will have given up my, I'll go off, to give up my family life and everything. And then if I fail, I'll be lost. I'll be like a riven cloud. I won't have any place in either sphere, So Krishna says, no. If you don't complete the course and you can, become completely fixed on the super soul in the heart, Krishna in the heart, then you'll take birth in a pure family. Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta. But then Yoga Brashta sounds like just what it is, busting the yoga, broken yoga. You didn't complete the course. Then you'll take birth in a very pious, wealthy family. You won't have to worry about your maintenance and a hard struggle for existence. Or even better, in a yogi family. And Prabhupada, I think in the purport, mentions his own birth and Bhaktisiddhanta's birth, taking birth in a devotee family. There's no more auspicious birth than that. So anyway, but Arjuna is still pessimistic. He's not, hopeful. So then Krishna speaks the final verse of the chapter, which is, and I said this before, you just almost hear Arjuna, a big sigh of relief when he hears this verse. Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddha bhambhajate yomam same yuktatamomata. Now, this verse was in I think the previous purport. I'm looking at it now, but the translation they gave is from the Macmillan Gita, which leaves some important things out. So I'm going to read the actual translation of it from the present Gita, revised. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself. Believe it or not, that line was left out. Think with me within himself, which is... and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Now, we're going through the Bhagavad Gita, just a little sidelight, editorial sidelight. And this phrase comes up quite several times in the Bhagavad Gita, where this word mataha is used, which is translated here, is considered. It's considered by me. That is my opinion, Krishna says. But if you look up the word opinion in the dictionary, what are you going to find? I did look it up. And here's what you find. Opinion, 1. First definition. A belief or judgment that rests on grounds insufficient to produce complete certainty. Does that make sense? Krishna's saying, this is my opinion? If people know what that means and look at it, it's going to be confusing. So really what he's saying, that is my conclusion, or I consider, right? But opinion is, Prabhupada used that phrase because he said, well, this is what I think. This is, but it's more than that. So anyway, that's the little sidelight there. But the point is that if someone is always thinking of Krishna within and wishing with great and transcendental faith, that's a devotee. And and Prabhupada makes the point, and so Arjuna is encouraged because he's doing that already. But still, the next verse, which is the first verse of the 7th chapter, which is the beginning of the middle 6 chapters, which Prabhupada said is the essence of the Gita, Krishna then begins saying how you can more easily place your mind on me and become attached to me, because the whole point is to become attached to Krishna. Maya saknamanapata yogam yunjanmanashaya asangshayang samagramam hita gyasati tatshanu. And Prabhupada picks up on those last 2 words, tatshanu, and he quotes a whole section from the 2nd chapter based on Srinvatam Sukata Krishna Punyashavana Kirtana. Our whole process of yoga begins and ends really with hearing and chanting. What are the gopis doing? When Krishna leaves the forest, They're hearing and chanting to keep themselves enlivened and remember Krishna. This is the song, one of the songs of the gopis, chapter 35 of the 10th canto, describing what he's doing. They're at home churning the yogurt or whatever they're doing. They're meeting actually together. And they're singing these songs, remembering him in the forest, what's going on with him in the forest, how he's with Balaram and he's herding the cows. And, you know, when he plays the flute, what happens? All of the cows, even far away, not just the cows, the deers and other animals, they suddenly become stunned in ecstasy. And they can't chew. They're chewing some food. They can't chew anymore. They're so much stunned. In other words, they're the greatest yogis, right? The yogis of the Dandakaranya forest and who were meditating there and wanted to have an intimate, you know, a conjugal rasa with Ram. He said, no. You'll take birth later on as the gopis, and you can have that with Krishna. So they're the greatest yogis. So this process of yoga that's been given to us, after all, we're following Lord Chaitanya. Rajo Bhagavan Vrajeshtanayas, and he's giving the verse describing what he taught. You know, worship Bhagavan, who is Krishna, and also worship his place, Vrindavan, as none different from him. How should you worship? Ramya kachadupasana vrdapatuvargena yakalpita. As the gopis did. Well, how did the gopis do? They didn't sit in meditation. Prabhupada asked on a tape, do you ever hear of the gopis sitting in meditation? Not really. So their meditation was their whole life. They're thinking of Krishna even at home and with their family and everything. And as soon as he calls with that flute, it's practically involuntary. They can't even take time to put on their ornaments and their makeup right. They're so attracted, they're so impelled to go and meet Krishna, which he told them that I will fulfill your desire to be my husband. So they're the ideal, and the process of bhakti that we're following, which is of course given by Lord Chaitanya and systematized and expanded, you know, so beautifully by the Goswamis, Rupa Goswami and the others, you know, giving all the details, is the best way and most practical way and most ecstatic way of fixing the mind on the absolute truth. You know, we're not so much worried about fixing our mind on the super soul and the heart. You know, we want to become advanced enough so we'll always see Shyama Sundar in the heart, right? So how do we do it? Who knows the verse? Sing, you can chant with me. Preman janat chudita bhakti vilochanena sandhas sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yang Shyama Sundana machinda gunaswarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Chaitanya saw that verse and all the rest of the Brahma Samhita was so important that he copied it and he brought a copy back. That, and what was the other book from South India? Krishna Karnamrita. Krishna Karnamrita. So the sound vibrations beginning, of course, with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and there was a beautiful verse I can quote it in one of the purports about the holy name. You know, I don't know how many of you have actually read that great voluminous book about Bhaktisiddhanta, compiled and written so wonderfully over years. You remember when he was writing it? It was 10 years. And Mahatattva was also reviewing something. But one of the chapters there, because it's divided into little chapters, it's not just chronological, although there is a whole description of his life, but there's more than that. The verses that he would quote in his favorite verses of quoting, just like we have Prabhupada's favorite verses, a whole section, a whole book like that. So one of them was he's encouraging the glorification of the holy name. Glorification of the holy name. Now, our philosophy is, right, we know, we've probably heard this many times over the years, that the holy name is non-different from Krishna. It's as good as Krishna. When you chant and you're associating with Krishna and you're getting purified by that association. There's nothing more purifying than Krishna, therefore there's nothing more purifying in this age, especially than chanting the holy name. So that's there. But if he's not different, then it's also like a person. And you'll find in the Stavamala, which I'm focusing my mind on, or trying to put that into the Veda base. because I don't know how much you're involved with the database, but it's been 5 years since they did an upgrade, since they added anything or corrected anything. So they're having a big upgrade in 2025, update for the database. And he wrote to me and said, do you have any books that you want to add? Because I already sent up the Pajavali and the Lila Chanda and the Govinda Virodavali. It's in the database, those books now. But the Stavamala is really expansive, and I'm going to try to get that up there. So the last Ashtaka in that Stavamala is the Namashtaka. Namashtaka. Several of which verses are quoted in Prabhupada's purports. And why? So the idea is like so many. One verse, several of the verses pray to the holy name for more attachment. I'll give you one sample. There's a list of names, and then he says, let me have more attraction. Agadamana Ishoranandano Nandasunu Kamalanayana Gopi Chandra Vrindavanindra and Panata Karuna Kṛṣṇa Vityaneka Swarupe Chai Mamadadachai Vardatam Nama Deha. So he's giving samples. Agadamana, the killer of Agasra. Yashodanandana, Nandasunu, those we know, right? The son of Yashoda, the son of Nanda. Nandasuna, Kamalanayana, you of the lotus eyes. Gopi Chandra, the moon causes the gopis' eyes to blossom. Moon of the gopis. Gopi Chandra, Vrindavanindra, the master of Vrindavan, the Lord of Vrindavan. And then here's my favorite one of this list. Pranata Karuna. You who are so merciful to the surrendered souls. I was thinking, so many devotees are initiated and kids are born into this movement, so, then you can give your child this wonderful name, Pranata Karuna Das. Yeah. And of course, Krishna, that's also listed there. And then the last part, Krishna, Ityaneka, you have unlimited names. Tvai mama naturuchai vardatam namadeya. This word vardatam should be familiar with us in the name Govardhana. No one pronounces it that way, but that's what it is, Govardhana. That which nourishes the cows, is it? Which is this wonderful special grass and all the water there. And this is why the Govardhan hill is the best servant of Krishna, the gopis declare. Because they love to please those who are dear to Krishna. The cows, the boys, Krishna and Balaram themselves, they're walking on the mountain. So, but here it says, Tvai mama rati uchai vardatam. Please nourish or increase my rati, my attraction for you, more and more. So we can pray like that. I remember I used to go to these japa retreats in the aughts, in the early years of this century. And there were 4 or 5 of them. And one thing that I realized, or that came to mind, because it's an incredible thing, spend all day for like 5 days or so, just hearing about the holy name, chanting the holy name, seeing slideshows about the holy name. It's quite intense, wonderful. So I was thinking, as we're chanting, one day is reserved for 64 rounds, which is quite a challenge. But I was chanting away, and I was realizing, because I was familiar with Namashtaka, that you can pray to the holy name, through the holy name. As you're chanting to the name Krishna, you can pray to the holy name, please let me have more and more attraction for you. Because attraction for the holy name equals attraction for Krishna, and that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to cultivate. When we become so attracted to Krishna that we don't want to forget him. Why do we forget Krishna? Because we let the modes affect us again, and we think something else is more attractive to think about than Krishna. And this is, again, bringing back to the 7th chapter. Because this whole passage that we've been reading about the yoga process, this is ultimately not for us. We know that, right? We're not. Some of the principles are also there. We should fix Krishna in the mind. We should, think of him within the heart, as it were. But how to go about facilitating that is more with active meditation, right? We should be thinking of the morning program. Of course, we do our 16 rounds. We chant before the deities. A lot of that. But then there's duties to perform. And while performing those duties, we should be thinking, oh, I'm doing this for Krishna, I'm doing this for Krishna. And we should remember him. The holy name is supposed to be going on, and you're able to, if you focus on the deities enough, the idea is that you remember them also. So the process, you say, well, we're having difficulty doing that. I've kind of reached a plateau. I know I have certain failings. I'm not able to really feel that I'm progressing. I'm not about to bloop or anything, but how can I facilitate more progress? So why not pray to the holy name? You see, if you want these, then there's other ones too. There's this devotee. Anyone know Madhuripura? You right, Madhuripura. He's a nice Kirtaniya. He's a son of a devotee who used to live here, Palata Priya, and I knew him from New York. We're old friends. So you know how he got that name? Balaram, you probably know, huh? Madhuripura means a flood of sweetness. And it's part of a verse about the holy name. It's given to him by Vaisheshika Prabhu, who knows all these verses and everything. So here's the last verse is super sweet. So Narada vino jivana sudhormi niryasa Madhuripura tvam Kṛṣṇa nama kamam spodame rasane rasena sada. So, oh holy name, you are the inspiration for the Vina of Narada. Isn't that a nice thing to contemplate? That he's chanting, so many kirtans with that Vina. Narada vino jivana, the life and soul. Narada vino jivana. Sudhormi means a flood of nectar. Niryasa, concentrated nectar. Madhuripura, which is so sweet, it's like a flood of sweetness. Your holy name. Madhuripura. Tvam Kṛṣṇa nama kamam. Now this word kamam in Sanskrit is an idiomatic. It means if you please. Please. From Krishna, oh Krishna nama, kamam. Spurame rasane rasena sada. Please appear on my tongue with ever-increasing taste. Please increase my taste for you more and more, and let it let me not become disinterested or want to taste anything else, basically. That's the last verse of the Namastika, and the last verse of the Stavamala. So these expressions, they were created by the great skill and devotion of Rupa Goswami, and also we have so many other writings of the Goswamis. And they're our greatest treasures, really, because they provide guidance, and this is what Prabhupada struggles, he works so hard to give us the nectar of devotion. It's a major, work. It's not so easy to translate that, and he did it for us. And it gives you great detail of the philosophy and the details of the process and the goal of the process of bhakti yoga that we're practicing. So many details about the different rasas are in there. There's a whole other addendum, if you will, another volume called the Ujjvala Nilamani, which deals just with the conjugal rasa. There's some mention of it and some details in Nectar Devotion, but not about so much of that you find about the parental rasa and the sakya rasa and like that. So he wanted to give that one special detail. So what I'm saying here is that this part of the Bhagavatam that we're reading, it's very good instruction, because the principle is there to fix your mind on the Lord and embellish His remembrance in the heart as you go about your day. Now, for the yogis, that's what they're doing. They're doing it through, and they're visualizing mostly, basically, the super soul in there, which is also bona fide. But the problem is that what the distractions may be, not so much, because they're living alone in forest or up in the Himalayas or somewhere. So that it's not going to be like living here with so many distractions right in front of your face. But still, as you're progressing in this yoga, if you're doing it right, you're going to be developing some siddhis. And those siddhis themselves can be a big distraction. That's why it said, Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakaliya Shanta. How can you have kama, lust for a siddhi? Well, just imagine if you could reach your hand out and get anything from anywhere. Prabhupada said he had a friend who told him, yes, I remember. We had a yogi that I think he was inviting up to his house or something, his father. And at one point he asked him, maybe his friend had been a young boy at that time, or an adolescent, what would you like to have? So, these days, I don't even want to guess what a 15-year-old kid would ask for. But that he asked for, I want to have a pomegranate from Kabul, Afghanistan. Apparently that's where the best pomegranates were going at that time. So he said, okay, look in the bedroom. Look in the next room. So he opens the door, and there on the bed is a branch just broken with a bunch of fresh pomegranates on it. Wow, you know. So of course today we say, all right, Fort Knox, you know, let's get some of that gold, you know, $800, $2,500 an ounce, whatever it is, you know. So that's a problem. That's why it says those who are siddhi kami, who are absorbed in those powers, and don't forget the demons become great yogis. Hiranyakashipu was a big-time yogi, and Ravana, you know, how Ram is shooting all his heads, he keeps growing them back. I mean, that was some kind of siddhi he had, right? Finally, he hit him in the heart. That was the end of him. So those siddhis, you can develop them and be a total demon, and they can become a distraction. And therefore, you become unpeaceful. I've got this siddhi, and I've got all this, you know, I can walk on water, big deal, but I don't have the property siddhi yet. But this other yogi who I know lives down the mountain there, he's got it, you know, so then you're envious of him. In other words, it's completely material. That's totally material. And even, according to Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on the Bhagavatam, when the Bhagavatam says, Dharma projita kaita votra, this word tra, atra. By the way, Gopi Puranananda gave some wonderful lectures on these early verses of the Bhagavatam. If you want them, I'll share them with you. And he pointed out that this word atra appears 3 times in this verse. It means here in the Bhagavatam, you'll find this. So here in the Bhagavatam, you won't find anything about these cheating religions. Dare I say it? Probably, you know, what is it? Prosperity theology. There's huge churches. They're not even churches. I think they meet in stadiums or something. And you got one guy up there who is revered because he's so filthy rich. You know, if he has 2 planes that he can fly, that shows that it really works, right? The product really. So you got to plant the seed. What's the seed? A big donation. You know, the seed. It's complete perversion of religion. But people want that, and you see, you know, and they look like they're, you know, so intensely praying for this. But they're not peaceful because they'll never have enough, and they'll find out they cheated. So this is the famous verse by Lord Chaitanya, and it brings us back to the present verse because Prabhupada quotes that peace formula. And the verse is Kṛṣṇa bhakta nishkama ataeva shanta bhukti mukti siddhikami sakaliya shanta. The devotees are mentioned first. Bhukti Kṛṣṇa bhakta nishkama ataeva shanta. Now this is right there in the Bhagavad Gita, near the end of the 2nd chapter. What do you find? Vishaya, oh God, what is that verse? It's right near the end. I forget the verse, but he describes that one who is free from Vishaya, from material desires, can actually find peace. You see, and so that's what Lord Chaitanya is saying here, that the devotees, because the pure devotee, because they're completely free of any tinge of material desire, you can be very peaceful. You see, but bhukti mukti siddhi kami, those who are after bhukti, the ordinary people, 99.99%, you know, sex, pleasure, and a million other things. How can you be peaceful? You can never have enough, and even if you get enough, you'll find that it's too much, and you become sick, and it's crazy. But that's all they know. So bhukti, but even mukti kami. Remember Prahlad's prayer. He uses this very, very phrase, mukti kami. Prayena deva munayo svavamukti kama. Remember that? For the most part, the munis, who are, you know, wise yogis and everything, svavamukti kama. They're lusty after their own liberation. They desire their own liberation itself is a material thing. You know, just alone. I'm going to be free from these pains, these horrible pains of birth, old age, disease, and death. But if I live here in San Diego, I'll be distracted, so I'm going off to the mountains somewhere, you know, where there are no people. The word vijane, where there's no people. And what is the key phrase there? Naparartha nishta, not at all determined to help others. This is not bhaktas, you see? So therefore it says mukti kami. Bhukti, mukti, and siddhi kami, that's the yogis. You're meditating, you're developing these siddhis, And they become, you really like it. I can read everyone's mind. I can travel, the military developed some of that, believe it or not. There was a story, I couldn't believe it. Is that the military now is convinced that consciousness is eternal and that reincarnation may be a real thing. Yeah, this is in the military. I said, what? Well, what are they, but how are they going to use it? So they have people already, remote viewing, astral travel, guys going over, who knows, to Russia, looking down and finding how many missiles they got pointed up, whatever, and then coming back. CIA guys. I don't know how they're developing it, but it's crazy. So you can see how just the powers alone can be a complete perversion. It's not anything spiritual, it's material. So, because the bhakta is nishkama, the pure devotee, has no material desire. Rather, what is that? Krishnendriya pratibhati tare prem nam. That famous verse in the Adi Leela, chapter 4. Atmandriya pratibhancha dare kam. Krishnendriya priti icha dare prem nam. Desire to please one's own senses is called kama. But desire to please Krishna's senses is called prema. And that's what we're trying to develop. So that at every moment of the day, we can feel confident, and we know, because it's authorized, we've been assigned it, that this, what I'm doing, whether it's distributing books, or addressing the deities, or cooking, or doing what I'm doing, trying to finalize the books, that we're doing it for Krishna's pleasure, we're doing it for Prabhupada's pleasure, we're doing it for our spiritual master's pleasure. We're not doing it for our pleasure, but our pleasure is in giving them pleasure by spreading Krishna consciousness, basically, and becoming Krishna conscious, those two things. So if one, from the moment one wakes up to the moment one takes rest, he's in that mood and he's actually doing those things with enthusiasm. And at the same time cultivating his own remembrance. I'm telling you, there's such treasures. They were so moving last night, and so wonderful to hear those kids chanting those shlokas. You could just, boy, I wish I was raised with that, right? But we're fortunate. But now, okay, better late than never. But we can apply our mind. This Prabhupada was sometimes saying hearing, chanting, and memorizing. That's there in the longest purport in the Bhagavatam. The purport to Prahlad's verse, famous verse, Srinvatam Sukata Kṛṣṇa. Prabhupada quotes extensively from Bhakti Siddhanta and goes through each one of the 9 processes, And part of the smaranam is memorizing. Remembering is, of course, slightly different. It means you're exposed to something, you're thinking of something so much, and you're developing an attraction for it, and then you can easily remember, you see. But the holy name, of course, is the fountain of everything. But these beautiful verses, like I'll just give you some samples, if you will. This is a real short one. In the Govinda Viradavali, there's these little verses, real small ones, that I refer to like Glubjman verses, because they're super sweet and very easy to handle, So here's one about Mother Yashoda and Krishna. Amba vinhita chumba mandata bimba data makadamba lakajaya deva. Now, it's not ordinary, Bhagavad Gita meter, but so what does it say? Amba, that's the mother, Mother Yashoda. Vinahita, she's performing, she's doing something. Chumba, she's kissing. Amba vinahita chumba mandatada. The pure face, she's kissing the pure face of Krishna. Amba chumba mandatada bimba dada makadamba lakajaya deva, which has these bimbadada. We had this phrase in the Damodarastaka. Krishna's lips are just like bimba fruits. They get often described like that. Bimbada mukha, his face, which is has these bimba fruit lips, mukha lumba lakajaya deva, and his hair is hanging down loose. They haven't had any hair cutting ceremony. So it's just a little image. You can chant it 5 times, 10 times, and you can just see that. The whole idea is that it sparks your remembrance in the most delightful way. And this is what was part of the gift of the Goswamis that they gave us. is that it is expanding on the Bhagavatam and this description in so beautiful ways that if we read them and learn the art of chanting, which I can help you with, it's not that difficult. It's the most delightful way to remember Krishna and share with each other. That's the big thing. Satam prasangan mama virya samvida. And that is, that there's a little, it's part of the Sadhu Sangashtaka that I discovered in the Bhagavatam, 8 verses about the importance of associating with sadhus, spoken by Kapila Dev to his mother at the beginning of instructions, 3:25:20 through 27. And within those 8 verses is this essential verse that we should know. 2, really famous, Titikshava Karunika, the symptoms of a sadhu, or the characteristics of a sadhu, and then the Satam Prasangan Mama Virya Samvida, which is almost like the mission statement for ISKCON. Satam Prasangan, this word prasanga appears at the very beginning, because it had different meanings. Prasanga can mean very powerful material attraction, too. Prasangam madadam pasham atmanakavayo vidu sahesha sadashukato moksha dwaram apavatam. He says, I put it into a little poem. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death, infernal. But love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. Don't forget, that is that we sing every morning. Shri Guru Charanarati Ese Uttamagati. Right? That's part of the song. That affection for the lotus feet of the Guru, Shri Guru Charanarati Ese Uttamagati, it can be 2 things. Gati can mean the goal, or it could mean the best means to the goal, which I think that's what it means in this context. Say Uttama Gati. That is the best means of advancement. Why? Because if you have real affection for the Guru and his lotus feet, then you'll be eager to fulfill his desires and please him. And then our life will be all auspicious. Right? That's also in this part of the Bhagavatam. The importance of the Acharya, the preceptor. Not just because you're getting knowledge and so forth, but you're developing a relationship and you're taking your great pleasure in fulfilling his desires. Just look at the early days of ISKCON. It was all moving on the fact that devotees were so attracted to Srila Prabhupada. They're attracted to Krishna, but he's giving them Krishna and he's part of the attraction. And so they were ready to undertake, this mission to England for those 6 devotees, those 3 pairs of householders, and little Saraswati there was also part of it. How courageous and how brave and how incredible that was. It's told beautifully. Mukunda Maharaj, I think, Miracle on 2nd Avenue is wonderful. And Rancho's book also. When the clouds clear or something? When the rain falls, I forget what is it. But it's when the sun shines. Thank you. Sun shining in England is a big thing. So why was that? Because they loved Prabhupada. There was such a... That was the moving force of everything. And in that, when they decided, okay, I'll chant, and they chanted, and then they found that they're becoming purified and becoming attracted to Krishna as well. That's the way it works. So I went over time. I am so sorry, but couldn't help it. Any questions, comments, locally or remotely? Okay. Vira Chandra Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Very beautiful class.
Oh, wait a minute, because I'm going to have to... Can you pull those curtains for me? The sun I have a sensitivity to that. Go ahead.
My question connected with a verse, text, that in this text speaks that our who practice this practice very fast, mind will be peaceful. And my question is, what I do wrong that my mind until now is not peaceful?
What did you do wrong? Well, that's a loaded question. I'm not going to answer that. But I think it's really important to, I remember that very distinctly. When I moved to the big temple in New York on 55th Street in 79, I think it was. And I spent a couple of years there before they sold it, working with Bhakti Guided magazine. And the Nectar of Instruction had just come out. It had come out, I think, in '78. And believe it or not, it had been in manuscript form for a long time. And being near the archives, several of us had read it. And I'll share something with you that is a kind of an editing pastime. But, you know, the last verse is all about the importance of living at Radhakund, right? And so in the purport to that, Prabhupada said, this is the most essential part of bhakti. Wow, you know. And there was several devotees that I knew that read that and took, you know, I said, well, I'm going to live in Radhakund. The way it is in the book is a most essential part, a most important part, you know. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But going back to the earlier part of it, we used to chant the first 7 chapters after every Bhagavatam class of that, you know, because they were felt to be so important. So there is so much instruction there in the verses and of course in Prabhupada's purports, that practical instruction on what's really, you know, the essential thing of how we ourselves are conducting our own devotional service. And of course, there's so much mention of how to deal with others, with other devotees, and how Kṛṣṇa yasigaditam manasadriyeta, you know, that if someone is just chanting the verse one time, you should offer your obeisances in your mind to them. You know, in other words, they're a very fortunate soul. What to speak if someone is initiated and like that, you know. So, and how to relate to Dadati Pratigrunnati. And of course, the first instruction really is how to choose a guru, you know. Because the things that are mentioned is something that you can see, you can perceive. Vacho vegam, manasak krodha vegam, jiva vegam, unado pasta vegam. These are all basically evident, you know, the pushings, the urges of the speak, the vacho of the mind, and the vacho and anger, you know, and of course the tongue, belly, and genitals, which are in a straight line. You learn that. So if someone actually can control those, you know, regularly, in other words, over time, not just one of these days, but has got full control of those, then you can be sure that they're advanced, you know, and of course the devotees. So that part of that verse is very key, and of course it applies to us also. We want to advance, we have to try to control those. But then you see, well, what is it that's blocking? You know, it's just like when you start yoga, it's yama niyama. Yama is the don'ts. You got to stop doing the nonsense before you start doing the do's, right? Yama and then niyama, and as well as what is it? Anukulyasya sang pratikulyasya varjanam. Likely there it's positive things first. But anyway, so but the next verse is atyahara priyasascha padabo niyamagraha. So we can check. Prabhupada has a nice purport there that these things impede or thoroughly can destroy your devotional life. Too much collecting, too much overeating. You know, that was always a struggle. I mean, I remember in the early days, I was totally like addicted to halva and ladus. So after every feast, I didn't care that some of them were left on the plates by the guests. You know, I was going for it. You know, every laddu that was available. So then I'm lying in my bunk. You know, oh God, I could hardly breathe. Never again, never again, never again. Next Sunday, you know. So it was a battle. But you realize, okay, you know, if I'm going to try to concentrate on the holy name, you know, you have to get control of it. So after some time, so that's practically what we can go through, and we can see that we're not sincere enough in following those, you know, and the do's and then the don'ts, and then of course the do's, those things. So we should carefully follow those. And associate with devotees, you know, that's part of it. Dadati Pratigrunnati, Guyamai. And how I see that you're staying thin, Prabhu. How are you doing it? You know, whatever, you know, you're able to. So take shelter of each other. That's the advantage of the society, is that you have, you know, you can always be encouraged by others. So that's about all I can say on that. Do we have another question? Okay, I know it's getting late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. And if